back after the short break. In the first panel, our powerful speakers are going to talk about visions, missions, and sustainable business models, insights from top performing business incubators, accelerators, and competitions. GCPIT, let me extend a very warm welcome to all the panelists and also the moderator, Mr. Biju Balagopal. Mr. Biju is the CEO of Renodo Consulting Private Limited. He has 25 years of industry experience in technology, innovation, management, design thinking, technical sales, M&A, etc. In mechanical engineering and MBA in finance. He is also a guest faculty for innovation and design thinking at various universities in Bangalore, Pune, and Hyderabad. Mr. Biju is the winner of the prestigious Innovation Consultant of the Year in 2017. The panelists who have joined us today are Dennis Oakley. He works with startups and enterprises to design and test business models. He is a serial entrepreneur with 15 years of experience as CEO, CMO, and COO in UK and Asian startups. As an engineer, he has a BA in philosophy from Bristol University and an MBA from Warwick Business School. When not trying to change the world one business at a time, he says, he is usually found running in the wildernesses of the Himalaya, Arabia, or Borneo. We have with us Leila Saidzadeh. She is one of the leaders of UNDP Accelerator Lab in Azerbaijan. Accelerator Lab is the fastest and biggest learning network across the globe. Leila, together with her colleagues, championed 12 projects in social innovation in the past 12 months. Leila has 14 plus years of a business background in Azerbaijan, Turkey, and New Zealand. Her areas of expertise include communications, corporate social responsibility, government relations, social entrepreneurship, tech for good. We have with us John Omo. Mr. John Omo is the new Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, ATU. He is leading the continental body entrusted with building consensus with African countries and coordinating African common proposals in international fora. Mr. Omo, in his 27 years experience as a lawyer, has contributed immensely to the drafting, vetting of local and international instruments, agreements, and treaties representing government in civil and arbitration matters, researches on policy and legal issues. Once again, I welcome all the panelists to this session, and over to you, Biju.
Thank you, Aparna. Thank you for those introductions. You have set the stage for us. Thank you. So, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the first panel discussion of the day at the Global Innovation, Incubation, and Entrepreneurship Summit 2021. We today see a lot of innovations happening in various sectors of the industry. But unfortunately, only a handful of them make it big in the business. So today, we will be taking a peek into the business models and the challenges around them for the innovative startups across the globe from our expert panelists. So we have one more panelist who's yet to join us. So while we wait for him, we'll start with the other two and we'll get into more discussions with the third panelist. So as Aparna said, today we'll be discussing about the visions, missions, and sustainable business models with an intent to get a lot of insights from the expert panelists that who have joined us today. Dennis, I think we'll start with you. So can you enlighten us with the most innovative business models that you have seen in the industry over the years?
I was thinking about this. Thanks, Biju. I was thinking about this morning and thinking very much with respect to the telecoms industry because I'm doing some work on 5G at the moment. And it struck me that the most innovative models in the telecom industry are probably Netflix and YouTube. When you say that, you go back to 2000 and so, and you look at someone like Vodafone's business model. They invested tens of billions of dollars into 3G, 4G networks, and yet 20 years later, the share price is 25% of what it was in 2000. What has happened on the other hand, for companies like Netflix and YouTube and Google and even Apple, is they have just grown so hugely as they've taken all the value that the telecoms companies thought that they were going to get by investing in these new networks. And this is something that I think is very interesting as we now go into the 5G environment. What is going to happen? Are the 5G companies building bigger mobile pipes out there going to get any of the value that they're expecting? Or is it going to be other very new companies like YouTube or Google or Netflix coming and taking advantage of that? But the key message is the winners of that earlier innovation were the people who saw the possibilities. They saw a lot of possibilities that the telecoms companies didn't, and created $5, $10, $20 trillion of value.
So maybe I'll move on to the next question for you. So how do you think startups should look at innovating over their business models?
Say it again, please.
Yeah, so my question was, how do you think startups should look at innovating over their business models?
So, actually, let me go back a little bit to what we do as Accelerator Lab to explain the perspective from which I want to elaborate on this question. So actually, Accelerator Lab of UNDP is focused on the solutions, not necessarily startups, which design their operating model, business model, based on the on sustainability principles. So what I can say from my side, working with lots of startups and innovative teams and organizing hackathons, seeing like all the people who are trying to innovate now and to create their startups. Currently, I think startups have to think about the sustainability of their model, not in terms of not only from financial point of view, but from the sustainable point of view, which means meeting and tackling global challenges in their solutions. Because this is something which is the priority for the whole world now. And this is something what we actually need. So if they want to be a part of if they want to think globally and to be a part of the bigger system, this is what I think, and this is what actually we do in Accelerator Lab, trying to help programs and startups and innovative teams to focus on the sustainability component in their activities, in their models, and ensure that they realize what does it mean, and they have this element in their business model.
Okay. So thank you, Leila, for that comment. So, Mr. John, coming to you. Yeah, sorry, we missed you while we were doing the introduction. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No issues. Thank you for joining us. So one quick question to you. So we hear a lot about the innovation challenges and the sponsorships and other things that ATU provides to young innovators. We wanted to understand more from you. What are you doing to encourage these innovative business models in your ecosystem?
Thank you very much indeed. Can you hear me? Can you confirm my audibility?
Yes, loud and clear.
Thank you very much, and once again, apologies for not being here when you are doing the intro. Thank you very much for the question. We as an organization work in the realm of ICT, and our core business is to encourage, ICT development on behalf of the African Union. And so we are a regional ICT organization concentrating in Africa. Now, Africa has some uniqueness to it. It comprises the youngest population now worldwide as a continent. It has certain uniqueness in terms of the rural nature in which our communities live. And the youthful population in Africa, I would say almost 50 or plus percent do not have gainful employment. But when you talk to them, you see a spirit of creativity, a spirit of innovativeness. And we haven't had such a platform. Of course, there are, organizations that have attempted to organize, at their level, innovative challenges in Africa or competitions. So last year was the first ever, continental-wide innovation challenge that we organized. And the experience to me was just amazing and overwhelming. Over, 166 participants with fairly innovative ideas. And out of that, we had 11 of them making it to the qualifying round. And of those 11, a good number of them were young lady engineers, I would say. And I've had to, deal with the enormous nature of the entrance, the inquisitiveness in terms of where can we get mentorship of opportunities? Where can we get venture capitalists? Where can we get exposure? And so the sort of experience that I would share with the team listening and my fellow panelists is that our youth in Africa have enormous amounts of talent, and what is needed is a mechanism or a platform to give them, an opportunity to express themselves and their skills in terms of innovation labs, hubs, and where they can just go and test their skills. That is the first key thing that I noticed. The second thing that I think is worth talking about, and Leila has just touched on it, is a consistent choice by governments to make the development of innovation or innovative opportunities for the youth. Most of our governments still do not make a conscious choice to ensure that our polytechnics, our training institutions emphasize on innovation as part and parcel of the curriculum. And I found that coming out quite well in some of the youth that we talk to. But quite apart from that, the role of the private sector is key in this regard because and partnership between the public and the private sector. The government has, and indeed most of the governments through the digital programs have initiated opportunities for some opportunities for the youth to express themselves in terms of innovation. And there needs to be a conscious choice again to ensure that the private sector is brought on board, because the private sector really is the engine that would drive this innovation. And there's a bit of that still lacking in our area in terms of a conscious choice by the public and the private sector to partner in this regard to ensure that innovative ideas see the end of day. Now, part of the requirement that we had for the challenge or the competition we had was to ensure that there were business ideas around the innovations that came up. And we also did establish that there is the temptation, especially from an engineering point of view, to think that anything that is innovative can be turned into a business, which is oftentimes not the case. And so we had a conscious decision to ensure that the ideas that came through were those that had a business ideas to them. And that is another key thing that is lacking in our youth, perhaps because most of the educational systems, especially at the tertiary lower levels, do not emphasize business as part and parcel of curriculum development and education. And so most of the innovations that fell through did not come or were not successful on account that they lacked innovative business ideas behind them. And so we also need to ensure that there's a conscious choice again here to ensure that, the youth is exposed to business ideas, and who better to do that than the private sector. So that, in a nutshell, has been my experience. We have partnered with quite a number of organizations in this regard: the International Telecommunications Union, Intel from South Africa, Huawei has been a large supporter in this. And we are now working towards the creation of innovation portals in our websites, so that these ideas can be seen out there by those that may be interested in them. Of course, we are also working with these young people and institutions to ensure that some of these ideas, they know the process of creating patents, or, protecting these ideas from predators. So those are also some of the challenges that the African innovators face, that, intellectual property rights associated with innovativeness is quite not grounded, and so most of the youth tend to lose out on their innovative ideas. Thank you very much for that question and the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. John. That's a very good insight that we could take from that. Dennis, I think we lost you for a few seconds in between, so welcome back, and next to you. So a few years back, we had seen a trend mostly among telecom operators and also with some ICT companies that they wanted to outsource the non-core functions to expert service providers. We saw that in India, where Bharti was outsourcing all their IT infrastructure to IBM and core network to Ericsson and things like that, value-added services to companies like Mahindra Comviva. And we saw that after 6-7 years, there was a rollback. They took all those functions back. So what is your view on that? Do you think that was the right strategy to outsource the non-core functions to the expert service providers? And why do you think they would have done a rollback after a few years? You're on mute.
Thanks. I think that's a really interesting question, Biju. I mean, I think part of it is none of the telecoms companies expected to lose so much value to all the consumer electronics companies. And so they were going to do that. Then when they didn't get that value and they realized that they were basically selling a commodity, they had to bring a lot of that back inside to desperately help with the cost cutting, because fundamentally the only thing that they had to differentiate themselves was the relationship with the consumers, and that was being damaged by the outsourcing. So it was unfortunate for them, bad choice.
Okay, great. Yeah. So Leela, coming back to you. So from the ACT Lab perspective, I would like to ask you, how do you plan to achieve acceleration of 2030 agenda as an ACT Lab?
So I think you all know that there is an agenda. And it's based on Sustainable Development Goals. And there are certain KPIs which we all have to achieve by 2030. Of course, COVID pandemic outbreak influenced us all a lot, and it may take more time, but actually having this innovation ecosystem now, and having this idea what Accelerator Lab is doing, gives us hopes that we can still accelerate the process and can still achieve the agenda of 2030. So basically, Accelerator Lab is the fastest learning network within UNDP, United Nations Development Program, which which is present in 92 countries now across the globe. And we were created, let me say like this, to help traditional UNDP programs and our counterparts, including local innovation ecosystems, to incorporate sustainable goals into their activities, and second, help to accelerate the traditional programs via innovative injections. So how we plan to do this innovative injections is about cooperating with local and ecosystem of innovators and growing them up. So basically, this is what we do now as Accelerator Lab. We are trying to create platforms. We are trying to create a platform to and help leaders and government and all important actors to work on innovative solutions on achieving Sustainable Development Goals agenda by 2030.
Okay. Thank you, Leila. So we wish you all the best for achieving that agenda by 2030 or maybe earlier. Yeah. So coming back to you, Mr. John, so you were part of various policy creations in Africa, and you've been part of various government initiatives for creating laws and policies. We are eager to hear your thoughts around the mobile money business in Africa, so be it Safaricom's M-Pesa or Airtel Money, or the services launched by Orange and MTN in Africa. So these have become the mainstream currency in that continent today, right? So how easy or difficult was it to adapt the laws and policies around these? And was there any challenges that the policymakers had to go through?
Thank you very much for the question. Confirm my audibility again.
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think one of the biggest, successes in terms of ICT in Africa is the issue of mobile money, and now it takes various forms and shades and shapes. But initially, it developed as just a means of transferring value from one place to the other on account of a service or a good that is received. And the first experience we had with it, or I had with it, was 20 years ago. I remember then, as a regulator, the idea brought to us, and we were wondering what sort of this thing, what sort of thing this was. We were not quite sure it would work. We were not quite sure whether it was even within the ICT regulators' ambit, and so we had contact with the central bank, and they were also not very sure whether this was within their regulatory ambit. And so the first challenge that I would talk about was who was in charge of this thing. Nobody was in charge. But that turned out to be a positive thing, because initially nobody is in charge, and so you leave the thing to flourish on its own. And so as it flourishes, as the operators adopted it and marketed it, and people got to use it, it added quite a lot of value to the traditional, voice and data. And for one of the networks that I'm aware of, nearly 30% of their revenues now come from that sort of stream. And so the first challenge that I would say was jurisdiction. Who was in charge of it? We were not aware, but that then was the source of success for the thing, because then it flourished in an atmosphere that was not quite tightly regulated, but then ensured that the adopters or the creators of the thing were left to innovate in the manner and in the way in which they wanted the direction to go. So that was the first thing that I think was positive to it, though initially seen as a negative. Now, and then as the system took root, then we realized that it was a good thing, and the central bank then decided we will have a light touch approach to it to enable it still flourish, because it's flourished fairly well in an atmosphere where there is clearly no regulation. So light touch or no regulation can in some ways, assist in innovation. The other experience that I think enabled this to flourish largely from Africa is the fact that Africa has had quite well the dubious, I would say, record of being the highest unbanked population in the world. No bank accounts, very few credit cards, banks in far-flung towns, largely rural-based population, mostly youthful, and indeed very, very small, I would say, minute sort of businesses, people selling vegetables by the road or some fruits. And that then was thought to be something not quite enough to lead to, a banked atmosphere. But it turns out that the small businesses was the sort of thing that this innovation targeted. And it turns out that they found it very ideal to use because mobile money then enabled them to get into the banking system, to save some little money, and to be sure and secure that they were not sleeping or spending with their monies in their homes. So it provided quite a good atmosphere for that sort of innovation. Now, of course, there were also challenges, and then I'll talk slightly about the COVID experience that I've seen in most African countries. There was indeed quite a bit of resistance initially from banks that the telcos were slowly eating into their pie and getting into the banking network. And most of our central banks have had to deal with that and ensure that the ICT portion is regulated by the ICT regulator, but the financial transfer portion is dealt with by the central bank. Now, but that resistance has also led to something that has been fairly good. That the ICTs and banks have merged in such a symbiotic fashion that most banks now have, or most ICT organizations have correspondent or partner banks that they work with. And that has equally led to the flourishing of the concept. So most ICT providers or, mobile companies that have this system, and most of them do, have correspondent banks with whom they work. Of course, we had the challenges initially of security and some pilferage, because when the network was not so secure, people would hack into it, and that made telco to lose some money in this regard. And of course, criminal activities, including money laundering. I think this was at the height of terrorism in Africa. There was quite a bit of money is being transferred through this system. And in one such instance, it was for terrorist activities. So when not regulated tightly, when not visible to the security system, it could also be a platform for criminal activities. Let me just talk then in conclusion about the COVID experience before I pen off. With COVID, of course, keep your distance. Don't touch what the other person has touched. And mobile money transfer has been a big business, especially in the Eastern African seaboard, because with governments and central banks and mobile companies and banks waiving, fees or lowering the fees that they were charging for this to ensure that people got more into this system for purposes of as a COVID-19 caution or measure to beat the spread of COVID-19. And so we've had quite an upsurge of transactions arising through the mobile money system on account of COVID-19. Because the telcos, the banks, the government through a policy system decided, working with the regulators, to waive charges that are associated with transfers of money through this system. So let me just pen off by saying that I think the biggest factor that led to its growth in Africa is the fact that it was unprecedented. It had not been tested anywhere. There was no jurisdiction where this had been done. It was an African idea to sort out or to deal with Africa's problems. And because it was not known, there was no precedent, the central banks and the ICT regulators initially ensured that it was developing or it developed in an atmosphere where it was not tightly regulated. And when they finally got to regulate it, it was light touch regulation. So I would say that what led to its success, from my experience, was the fact that it was unprecedented and finally a light touch regulation. Over to you.
Thank you. Very insightful discussion that was done. I think I had seen even the local population innovating around mobile money. The local chamas, for the rest of the audience, the chama is nothing but a unregulated chit fund kind of a thing, which is among the group. A lot of chamas in East Africa, especially Kenya, Uganda, and I could see people creating chama groups around mobile money. So there was local people innovating. Yeah,
Sure.
great. I think Africa really championed the mobile money sector. Great, thank you. Dennis, coming back to you. As I said in the beginning, we see a lot of startups coming up, but many of them are short-lived. We see almost, at least from an Indian perspective or an Asian perspective, we see almost 80% of the startups are dying within a 12 to 18 months time frame. So if I say most of these startups are coming up without any clear vision or understanding the purpose, just jumping in with an idea and a solution, what will be your comments on that? You're on mute.
Thanks, Biju. Sorry about that. So used to Zoom. I think there are a lot of reasons for startup failure. I mean, I think to start with, I'm an engineer. I come from an engineering background, and engineers like to make things. So we have an idea, we go out and make it. And if you look at something, the way that business models work, you've got three chunks of the business model that are important. It's got to be feasible, i.e. you make something that's going to have an impact. It's got to be desirable. You're making something that the consumer, the end user, the client wants, and it's got to be viable. It's got to make money. It's got to pay for your costs. And an awful lot of startups are focusing on the feasibility. Can we make it, rather than does anybody care? It's still going back to that old problem of, well, let's build a basketball field and hope people come, which is to a similar extent the problem that we've got with 5G at the moment. I've spent the last week going through, I don't know how many hundreds of papers, my McKinsey, BCG, etc., etc. Can I find a compelling business case why this is going to work? No, I can't. And it's driven by engineers. I think that's the first thing. But over the last 20 years, and I think Layla will agree with this, we realized that startups aren't the same as big companies. They are very, very different. And so we Steve Blank, Eric Ries, and the whole lean startup movement, we worked very hard to actually find what works for a startup to get them to succeed better. But the survival rates still aren't changing. I was reading a paper this afternoon for something entirely different, and it seems that startups just don't go and look at all the data, don't understand what they need to do to survive, to have a good chance of success. And my intuition, and we're trying to put some research together to support this, is it's not a problem of knowing the right thing or even doing the right thing. It's a question of timing. What are they going to do? When do they need to do it? And constantly they're doing the wrong thing at the wrong time, or the right thing at the wrong time. And this is just ripping out the possibility of them getting off the runway. I was speaking to one Dutch entrepreneur yesterday who was heading out to Uganda, and I asked him some pretty basic questions about his customer. He's just got not enough of an idea about who his customer was, what they cared about, how he was going to be changing their lives. We're not selling products, we're selling something that is going to change their life. And if, as a startup, you don't know how you're going to change somebody's life, you are almost doomed to failure.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Dylan, for that. So Leila, let's come back to you. Being one of the leading accelerators in Baku in Azerbaijan, we want to understand how do you interact with these entrepreneurs and startups in your region?
Actually, one of our goals is to build innovation ecosystem in the country whenever we exist, build or develop. In case of Azerbaijan, we are talking about development, and we believe that one of the best ways to accelerate this development is to create partnerships among startups, government, private sector, because these startups, they need to understand, in order to form this social innovation thinking, startups needs to be partnered with either with the government or with the development sector, because when there is no request coming, then there is no innovation, because startups have to know gaps and challenges to come up with the innovative ideas. So basically and sometimes governments are not ready to work with startups because it's totally new, as in our case, they don't understand this business model. It's not traditional business, but at the same time, it's not non-profit. So as ACLab is kind of accelerator lab is at the edge of all these industries, let's say. We are trying to connect dots and build partnerships where startups can cooperate with the government, let's say, because this kind of partnerships inspire startups to focus, first inspire startups to grow, to develop, to inspire people to join this innovation ecosystem. And also, when requests comes from the government or from development sector, as we are UNDP, then it makes startups think about social innovation and social challenges. So basically, this is how we operate, and this is how we build and develop ecosystems and help startups to grow. And actually, from our experience, we already have some good examples. During the COVID outbreak, I can tell you that we led this innovation in response to COVID pandemic, and we made the innovation ecosystem to focus on this direction first, and second, because we were innovating and we were speaking with startups the same language, so we could kind of translate what the government needs were to startups. And we managed to have some partnerships, like, for example, there was one startup, they developed a chatbot for local audience on COVID. And we all know that in the times of COVID, we didn't experience only pandemic, but we also experienced infodemic, because there were lots of gossips, fakes on the COVID topic. So we helped the startups, and when the startups created this chatbot, no one was interested in this, but we spotted them, and then we connected them with the government body who were actually trying to find some channels to communicate right information, proper information to the or to just regular people, to the population. So this cooperation created a buzz and pushed other startups to apply to government with their solutions, and some of them also worked. So basically, this is how we try to develop ecosystem and direct startups to social innovation at the same time.
Thank you, Leela. That's interesting to know how infodemics were suppressed within a region right here. Great. So before we conclude, I have a question to all three of the panelists. So as an incubator or a mentor or a sponsor to innovative ideas, what will be the most important aspect that you look for in a startup before you decide to support them? Any of you can answer. Yeah, Dennis, you want to go ahead?
I look for mastery. Basically, the startups who don't really have any domain knowledge, who don't understand the industry that they're playing with, often struggle a great deal. They struggle to penetrate the market. They struggle to scale up afterwards. You've got to choose the right people. So, for example, I'm working with a startup at the moment, and they've got 50 years of combined experience in the logistics industry. So they know what they're talking about. They can go out and they can absolutely hammer the industry because they know the real weaknesses, and they're really, really convincing. But at the same time, they've got that, oh, we don't like the way they did it. They're thinking differently. They're not trapped in the mindset that you get from being in an industry for 30 or 40 years. And you've got to have that blend. And those people I've seen are able to go really deep into the value proposition and deliver something better over and above.
Yeah, John, I would like to hear your comments. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the question. Just following up on what Dennis has indicated, I think the key issue for me, and I think for the sort of ideas that we have had to work with in Africa, the key question for me is what challenge or what problem are you trying to solve? What challenge or what problem are you trying to solve? And then secondly, is the system as designed providing a solution to that challenge or that problem? I think Dennis has, in other words, touched about it, because you find, yes, there's a challenge or a problem to be solved, but the system as engineered perhaps veers off a little bit. So you need to work with investors, with capitalists, with other designers in order to re-engineer the system to sort out that particular challenge. So for me, that has been the key issue in Africa. The sort of challenge that is sought to be met by the solution, and whether that solution is engineered for solving that very problem. I think if you answer those two questions, then I think there would be a business case. Thank you very much.
Perfect. But I think it's not just Africa. Worldwide, we see that problem, because people don't focus on the problem, they focus on the solution. Leila, any quick comments? We have 1 more minute before we close.
And I just wanted to build on the same. So we have frontier challenges each year. And then we start to look to the grassroots innovation, because we believe that innovation comes within. So it's very important to have people on board who experience the problem and resolve it, or at least we're very close to those who experience the problem. So basically, this is how we seek innovative solutions in our case. So basically, it's almost the same.
Okay, great. I think that was a great closing comment from all three of you. So for the startups who are listening, having the right people, making sure that you understand the problem and challenge at hand, and coming up with the right problem statement is again something which Leila has ascertained. So I think there was interesting use cases that we could hear from all three of you, how innovation challenges were posed and how solutions came up. I think a great discussion from Mr. John on the M-Pesa and how the lack of regulation helped to create innovations around mobile money. It's very interesting to hear. And Leila's comment on infodemics and how innovation was used to curb infodemic along with the pandemic. That was a good thought to hear. And Dennis, great expertise on so thank you all three of you. It's a pleasure having you today with us. And I think our audience have been enlightened with a lot of interesting thoughts and use cases. We look forward for an engaging and collaborating session with all of you going forward in the future. So have a good day, and thank you once again.
Thank you. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Biju, for moderating that session excellently. And thank you, dear panelists, for joining us today. It's now time to take one more short break, and we'll be back with our next panel.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.